So this is probably one of the shortest Archon quests ever, but I still wanted to make a recap video and analysis on this because I wanted to put you on some theories regarding Capitano, his actual name, and his potential plans to save Natlan. After this quest, I'm partially convinced he's going to try to kill a god, but let me know what you think. I'm your leafy lore keeper Minsleif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to. Act 5 interlude titled All Fires Fuel the Flame starts a few days after the massive war in Act 4. Chaska's tribe, the Flower Feather clan, suffered the most during the calamity. The Traveler and Paimon aid in their reconstruction. Turns out Yansan and her students from the Collective of Plenty are already there. Yansan is a personal trainer who specializes in getting people swole for sport or battle. Love that for her. Unfortunately, the Flower Feather clan has been dealing with some pretty intense after effects from the war with the Abyss. Some warriors were in close proximity of the abyssal tumors that Gosoithoth dropped and are experiencing severe hallucinations. Gosoithoth is the name of the abyssal being that appeared in the sky. In Natlan, it's known as the Reaper of the Abyss. Gosoithoth is an anagram of Yog-Sothoth, a fictional cosmic entity and outer god created by H.P. Lovecraft, an author of the well-known Cthulhu mythos. Yog-Sothoth, also known as the Key and the Gate, is said to see all and know all. He can make deals and offers with humans and bring back people from the dead. However, anyone he brings back from the dead will turn into a vampire. This lines up with the characters in Genshin who were given a second chance at life or enhanced using the powers of the Abyss. They take on a new abyssal form. The name Reaper of the Abyss definitely feels like a nod to the Grim Reaper, and now I wonder if one of its purposes is to collect souls. Paimon suggests for Traveler to use their powers to purify the people from the abyssal corruption, but unfortunately it doesn't work. The tribe's people are hopeless that their warriors will return back to normal, but Yansan is hopeful. Yansan has a theory that giving these people hope could help break them from their hallucinations. It seems to work on Otoko and Kochita, but Okotlan seems like a lost cause. Okotlan is on a rampage and believes he's being surrounded by abyssal monsters. Not even his father's pleading voice is enough to break him from his hallucinations. Capitano steps in and explains that this is abyssal corrosion syndrome. During his battle with the Abyss, he had witnessed his own soldiers succumb to this affliction, becoming so deranged that they turned on each other. His men had developed a cure called a Draft of Lucidity to dispel the extreme psychological impact of the Abyss. However, this cure comes with potentially bad side effects, including chronic migraines for the rest of the patient's life. Honestly, migraines over losing your mind to the Abyss doesn't sound like too bad of a trade-off. Okotlan's father accepts the medicine and he begins to show signs of returning to normal. Okotlan's father asks Capitano for his name in order to thank him, and Capitano says then just says Capitano's okay. Capitano is khaenri'ah, meaning there's a high chance for him to have a Nordic name. Think Rhine-Daughter, Dainsleif, King Irmin. The other names like Alberic and Clothar have German and French origins respectively. If Capitano's name is of Nordic origin, here are some possibilities. I know a little bit of Korean, so I tried my hand at this. In the Korean translation of the game, Capitano's name is transcribed as Sura. In English, the closest sound would be tra or tra. That's interesting because some Nordic names beginning with tra or tr sounds are attributed to the god of thunder, Thor. Here are some names from Norse mythology that could be used as inspiration for Capitano's real name. Thrudvang is the name of the realm where Thor resides. Thrud is the name of Thor's daughter with the goddess Sif. The name Thrud is found in the poetic Edda, and this poem depicts the abduction of a goddess by a giant and the failure and death of the abductor. Thrudgelmir, meaning Strength Yeller, is the son of the primordial giant Orgelmir. Orgelmir was a giant who was created from the drops of water that formed when the ice of Niflheim met the heat of Muspelheim. If Thrudgelmir is Capitano's potential name, that would be cool considering his cryo abilities and his ties with the Pyro Nation. Or, this is probably unlikely, but for you Capri-san or Mavuitano stands specifically, his name could also be Thrasir, from Liv Thrasir. Liv and Liv Thrasir were the last two humans who survived Ragnarok and were responsible for repopulating the New World. I heavily doubt his name is Thrasir though. Now back to the recap. Capitano hands a few more doses of the Draft of Lucidity to the rest of the Natlan warriors to cure them. He saves the day. As explained in the previous quests, after the Cataclysm, Capitano and his soldiers ended up in Natlan, where he later befriended the chief of the Masters of the Nightwind. He'd been fighting with Natlan against the Abyss for many years, which explains his loyalty to his new homeland. Capitano doesn't use his real name out of shame. He feels unworthy of his original name after failing to protect both khaenri'ah and Natlan from the Abyss. The Draft of Lucidity was Guthred's invention since Capitano's men at the time had also suffered from Abyss corrosion syndrome. Boothred was the khaenri'ah man who momentarily possessed Auroran in the previous act. He was a respected military doctor and also Capitano's trusted second-in-command. Capitano says that although Natlan survived the worst of the crisis, the souls of the land are still not at peace. Therefore, his job in Natlan isn't done. Capitano offers to answer any question the traveler might ask. I laughed because Paimon wanted to know how Capitano eats with his mask on, and honestly, same Paimon. Traveler remembers what Citlali said in the previous act. Natlan must pay the price for Mavuika's use of the Ruler of Death's power. That price is death, and only Mavuika's death can clear the debt. So unfortunately, even if Mavuika's act saved Natlan for utilizing the power of the Ruler of Death, Mavuika has to pay the price. So, Traveler asks Capitano what he knows about the Ruler of Death. To recap, Genshin has a god of death. Her name is Renova, and she's one of the 4 primordial gods who existed during the creation of Teyvat. With her, there's a god of time, Istaroth, a god of life who is unnamed in the Fontaine Wings lore, and potentially but not confirmed, a god of space. These primordial gods, or shining shades, work under a higher god, the heavenly principles, or the primordial one. Renova worked with the first Pyro Archon Xbalanque to establish the rules of Natlan, like the pilgrimage, which essentially allows ordinary humans to become Pyro Archons. Those who ascend gain the knowledge and memories of Natlan through the sacred flame. Xbalanque and Renova agreed that anyone using Renova's powers would eventually die. If the heavenly principles discovered this arrangement, Renova would deny involvement and claim her powers were stolen. So to answer Traveler's question regarding the Ruler of Death, Capitano gives them an analogy. In the garden cultivated by the gods, flowers and weeds grow side by side. When the weeds compete for nutrients in the soil, the gardener intervenes to inhibit their growth. This is an interesting analogy. The first thing I thought of was Ei and Inazuma. During the Cataclysm 500 years ago, her dearest friends and sister, the previous Electro Archon Makoto, were killed. Since Ei suffered so much loss from the process of progress, her solution was to keep herself and Inazuma locked in a state of eternity. Not to mention, khaenri'ah was a highly advanced human civilization that wasn't ruled by a god, meaning many to believe that progress is what caused Celestia to target khaenri'ah specifically. Capitano's analogy also implies that Celestia makes a distinction between humans. Flowers, potentially their chosen people, and weeds, people that are not chosen or people who aren't under the authority of the gods. When the weeds compete for nutrients in the soil, the gardener intervenes to inhibit their growth. That's a scary saying, and it implies that one of the primordial gods or the heavenly principle themselves is the one to carry out the penalty. Capitano blames the god of death Renova for his suffering and the suffering of khaenri'ah. And then Capitano takes off his mask. But are you kidding me, Hoyo? We don't get to see his face? Oh, come on! He takes off his mask to show the effects of the curse of immortality which afflicts the khaenri'ahs. According to Paimon and Traveler's reactions, he potentially looks ghastly. That would have been so cool to see. Capitano explained that even though he's cursed with immortality, he still rots. It's unclear if he decays like a human body would, or if this rot is similar to what we see Dainsleif experiencing. Ziraven from the khaenri'ah of Good and Evil World Quest implies that half of Dainsleif's body had become that of a monster. So I think this blue corruption we see creeping up Dainsleif's neck is him potentially turning into an abyssal monster. Think Halfdan. So there's a possibility that Capitano's rot is different from what Dainsleif is experiencing. It could mean that he's essentially a zombie. According to Capitano, the god of death can freely define the form of death and grant immortality to whoever she pleases. Her power is a rule in and of itself. He says that he believes that in this world, no destiny is unchangeable, and no death is inevitable, and no rule is unbreakable. Let's circle back to this later because what he says here is super interesting. Yanzan interrupts and informs Traveler that Shilonen is now ready to make their ancient name. Back at the Stadium of the Sacred Flame, Shilonen gathered the Natlan crew to testify about Traveler. Both their testimonies and hopes, as well as the Pilgrim's Chronicle we received from the Lord of the Night Kingdom, are needed for Shilonen to craft the ancient name. Everyone, including Paimon, give their testimonies, and this is where Act 5, All Fires Fuel the Flame, ends. So circling back to Capitano. Capitano said that the god of death defines death and her power is a rule in and of itself. He says that he believes that in this world, no destiny is unchangeable, no death is inevitable, and no rule is unbreakable. This would be crazy, and I kind of doubt Genshin will do this, but what if Capitano plans to somehow kill the god of death? I'm just entertaining the possibility. No rule is unbreakable, so does breaking the rule of death require killing its ruler? Killing gods have pretty extreme consequences in Genshin. During Zhongli's story quest Act 1, when the people of Liyue killed khaenri'ah, the god of salt, during the Archon War, all of her people were turned into salt. This is potentially why during the Archon War, Zhongli sealed gods like Osail and Goonstone Forest, because killing them could have destructive consequences. Capitano stated that Natlan still has one more final battle, and he himself still has one more foe to face. The Lord of Night recognizes that the god of death has sent Capitano on his long journey. Either he's working with the god of death, or Capitano is essentially on a long journey for revenge. If the ruler of death is dead, then Mavuika might not have to die, but there are still things to consider. We don't know what kind of consequences will happen if the god of death is killed. I don't think the Heavenly Principles would appreciate one of their higher gods being killed. That's even if they're weak to care. If there's no god of death, what happens to the concept of death in Teyvat? Does killing the god of death mean the souls of Natlan can finally rest? If not killing the god of death, would a transfer of power occur? So, where would this power over death go? These questions are definitely something to think about before the next Archon quest. Super short, but if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm your leafy lore keeper Minsleif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to.